Welcome to the Gamut of Performance. I am here with my co-host Isaac Rogers from Limestone College, and we have Lee Burton, the co-founder of FMS. Lee, thank you so much for being here with us. Really appreciate you and looking forward to diving into some stuff. So for the listeners at home, will you tell us a little bit about your background, your motivation, and kind of where you are currently?
Okay, yeah, great. And thanks for having me on. This is a great opportunity. Yeah, my background is primarily in sports medicine, athletic training, a little bit of strength conditioning. I actually graduated from Appalachian State. Got my master's from Old Dominion, and then my doctorate degree was from Virginia Tech in health and wellness. Mm-hmm. And I spent a lot of time early in my career in the sports medicine world doing sports medicine outreach. Got a little bit into strength conditioning. Really, I'd say my expertise is really bridging that gap between the athletic training world and the conditioning world. So that gap when someone gets injured, getting them back on the field or back ready even to go in the weight room. Mm-hmm. And then more recently, as you said, I'm one of the co-founders of Functional Movement Systems. We developed the Functional Movement Screen, myself and colleague Gray Cook, a number of years ago. So really primarily right now it's between consulting and teaching about what we do within Functional Movement Screening in our system.
Okay, awesome. And I know you've covered this before on in different outlets, but will you let everyone know kind of how you started to conceive the idea for FMS?
Yeah, I think, my colleague Gray is a little bit of out-of-the-box thinker, and he was just looking at the body a little bit differently based off his background in physical therapy. And in the clinical setting, when someone would come in with an injury, he wasn't just looking at that body part. He was looking at the entire body, looking at how people moved. So you come in with a back injury, he would have you, squat, stand on one foot, rotate. He'd be looking at your shoulders, your ankles, all these different areas. And how people move and really looking at patterns. And from that point, he and myself and a couple other colleagues really felt we needed to be more proactive in the high school setting, trying to really eliminate or avoid injuries that happen in the weight room. Let's make sure these high school kids are ready to go in the weight room and do certain lifts like squatting or bench press, which are common lifts that are done.
Yeah.
And we just looked at some of these things and we're like, hey, this kid can't even squat with his body weight.
Yeah.
We may want to check that out first before you put weight on their back.
Yeah.
And that was really the genesis of it. Was like, let's do some of these things. Let's make sure this kid has good shoulder mobility, or it's simple enough. Let's make sure they can do a push-up before we have them do a bench press. So that was really what came out of that. And from that, we had these different movements. We said, let's do these before we do higher level activities.
Awesome. Okay. And one of the things I really wanted to dial into, there's a lot of different parts, right? There's the Y balance test, there's FMS, there's SFMA. One of the things that really interested me was the breathing portion of the FCS breathing, right? So how does that what does that look like? Let's go with what that looks like first.
Yeah, I think, breathing, something I never really thought of, and I don't think a lot of people in generally in strength conditioning and in the sports medicine world think about breathing that much. We all know, hey, it's just something that happens.
Yeah.
But I think the more that has become, I'd say, mainstream in the profession with PRI and some different people looking at breathing, it's something we started looking at a little bit deeper.
Yeah.
Because if we're going to talk about movement and we're going to try to be the movement screening people, we have to consider breathing because they're interrelated. The research is pretty clear that if you got movement problems, you got a breathing problem. Now, again, what comes first, the chicken or the egg, right?
Yeah.
Does breathing drive movement? Does movement drive breathing? It's all connected. So we went down the rabbit hole, a colleague of mine, Dr. Kyle Kiesel, and looked at breathing. And really, for us, it's always about trying to make something simpler.
Okay.
Testing breathing and assessing breathing can be somewhat complicated. So we want to make it easy. So that's where we came up with our breathing screen, where you just do a control pause, which means a breath hold time. That along with some questions, because the one thing about breathing is there's 4 distinct components. There's a chemical component, psychosocial component, a biomechanical component, stress component. So there's all these different components that drive your breathing, and you have to consider all of them if you really want to dive into it.
Okay, that makes sense. So how does this kind of balance out? There's a lot of different camps, right? I'm not sure if you're familiar with like PRI or like DNS or like infrasternal angle and stuff like that. Do these kind of overlap? Are they different camps? Are they in contention with each other? How does that look?
I think it's like there's always going to be some overlap, and there's always going to be a little bit different way of thinking in everybody's camp, and that's a good thing. That's nothing wrong with that. I think it's up to we do a lot of stuff. A lot of our philosophy aligns with DNS and how we look at getting you down on the floor
Yeah.
and doing some roll and doing some
Yeah.
different patterning like that to get you up to standing.
Okay.
Same thing with PRI. Our methodology aligns very well with PRI. PRI's got some great ways to improve and enhance your breathing
Yeah.
dysfunctions. And again, transitioning you up into more functional movement, I think that's where PRI and what we do align. There's always going to be a little bit of disagreement with how you do things.
Most definitely.
And I think it's up to the professional, the observer to look at all of that and then come up with their own conclusions and come up with their own best practices. Take a little bit from what we do, a little bit from what they do, and integrate it all into what you're doing and see what kind of outcomes you get.
Awesome. Okay. So kind of staying on the same vein, with this breathing assessment, right, is it easy to implement within the college setting with like groups, or is this more of like kids got to come in one-on-one? How does that look?
No, it definitely can be done in groups. Just like, obviously today, we did the breathing screen with our little seminar today. So it's something that can be done very easy. And it's simply trying to put you in a category. It's not an assessment. It's not diving deep and saying, hey, this is exactly your problem.
Yeah.
But what it does is it's a real simple thing you can do. It takes less than a minute. Answer a few questions, do a breath hold time, and then from that point, it may say, hey, you're fine. Or it may say, hey, you got some problems. And I think that's where I think we can align with PRI, for example. Yeah. If you've got some significant issues on our screen, definitely try some of the PRI techniques out for breathing and see if those techniques improve. So really, we're just offering up a gauge.
Okay.
So here's our gauge. Yeah. Here's let's take your temperature and see if you can improve on it.
Awesome. So FMS is doing more of an integrative approach where you can use other camps as well.
No question. I mean that's really one where we felt like we have been able to sustain what we do. Is we've never come out and said, hey, this is the way you got to fix this problem. Hey, we offering up a screen. I really quite honestly don't care what you do. You want to do DNS, PRI, you like kettlebells, you like TRX. It doesn't matter. We're just simply saying, hey, here's a baseline. Improve it.
Yeah. No, I like that. Awesome. Isaac, I know you had some questions, so let's dive into a couple of those.
Yeah, definitely with stress management within the tactical populations and the research that I've looked back at some of your stuff, and you've done some research in with some naval groups, some Navy SEAL groups. What are you guys doing currently? Because it is a big impact on national budget and everything, due to the musculoskeletal and everything else that happens in training. Like, are you guys doing stuff right now to help alleviate some of that pain, alleviate some of that stress for that population?
Yes, we're definitely. I mean, specifically, we know that a lot of the tactical groups will do the screen and then try to do different things like PRI, DNS, whatever it is to try to improve that. I do think breathing is going to be a big part of that moving forward. Sleep. It really has to be a holistic approach.
Yeah, stress management.
It's all of that.
And that goes in the military's model of like the complete soldier, where they have the 4 or 5, not disciplines, but 4 or 5 pillars that creates the whole soldier.
I think the big thing that we're starting to move into is more of that occupational setting, where you got these guys, the police officers, the firefighters, that tactical setting, even getting into some of the occupational areas. Because as you said, the musculoskeletals driving so much. That is the big driving thing right now for almost anything, these musculoskeletal injuries, with the funds that are being having to dedicate to that. So anything that can be done to try to alleviate some of those problems.
And I feel like that field in itself, or that branch, the military, is just stuck. They haven't really come into this newer approach. The boots are big limiters, the packs are big limiters, and create injuries and cost the money. But like, are you guys taking approaches towards like policymakers to see if you can get some stuff made?
That's like difficult. I mean, we have been. I've been on some committees and been involved with some task force, if you will, to look at things. And the military is so big that it's very difficult to make a big impact. I think there's definitely a lot of things occurring. I think they're really trying to do as much as they can. At the end of the day, here's what I have learned, especially in the military. They're going to run, they're going to train a certain way, and because it's so big, it's fragmented, that it comes down to, what is that particular unit, the guy in charge of that unit, what do they want to do? What kind of decision they want to make? It's a big, big undertaking, and it's got to be very much a shift in not only the thinking, it's got to be a cultural shift, a way of thinking. I mean, they know what's causing a lot of these problems. They know that running with 50 pounds on your back is causing a lot of the issues. So are they going to eliminate running? That's the type of thinking that's got to occur in doing different types of training. And that's just tough to do. There's such a long history of doing it that way. That's going to take a big undertaking to get that changed.
And on that same topic of changing a culture, pulling it back into the civilian world, there's so much room again. Like, that's such a big population to affect. And FMS gives a lot of options to go in there and work on just lifestyle and stratifying everybody out just in that alone, and then going into movement. Have you guys been working on that front as well?
Yeah, that's probably our biggest initiative right now, is trying to have an impact on the occupational arena, but also just in general, the general population. Obviously, that's our biggest impact. We started in athletics. Got into the military and the occupation and the tactical setting. Now our next thing is really trying to make people aware. I think the lack of awareness of just being able to do basic things is a very difficult thing to get people to wrap their heads around. Hey, you should be able to bend over and touch your toes. You should be able to squat down. Those are natural things that we all should be able to do. Too many people can't do it, but too many people don't know they should be able to do it. So just making them more aware is a huge undertaking.
I mean, and we're in an awesome time right now where, we've got computers in our hands, most of us, so if you can get it out and market it the right way, not even market it, but just educate the general population.
Right, and that's what we're doing here. I mean, that's what has to happen. Is just doing things like this to continue to make people more aware, And I think at the end of the day, I said this earlier, because musculoskeletal injuries are such an issue, they're costing so much money to insurance companies, to businesses, that people are becoming aware. This is a problem. We've got to affect it. It's just now figuring out what's the best way to have an impact. And I think it even goes back down to changing bringing back physical education, going all the way back down to the kids and training them the right way.
And it starts young in that socioeconomic model or socio-ecological model.
Yes, I totally agree.
And then, but one way, and when I asked about policymakers, is that that's how you make a grand impact. I feel like on a big culture. So on general population, is get to the policymakers. Because they're just looking for a re-election. But how do you say, oh, Mandy sits down all day and has, tight hips, tight ankles, and has low back problems as well, and her employer's paying for it. How do we get her out of that? Because that's how she makes money. But there's always not reimbursement, but there's always getting compensated.
Yeah.
Like workers' comp.
Yeah. Getting compensated to go out and do work out. Yeah. Okay, we're going to pay your gym membership. We're going to pay you to do this. We're going to pay a trainer to come in. We're going to give you these opportunities. And I think what's going to drive this is the fact that it's costing so much. It's costing insurance companies so much. It's costing government so much. The companies so much money for these musculoskeletal problems. People are missing work because of back pain. So we got to figure out, okay, let's attack this issue. And I think there's where the policymakers are going to start. Yeah,
when you deal with people's money, when you deal with people's well-being, that's when you get the eyes are open then for the policymaker. But it's just tough to do. You just got to get in the right place, right time.
Right. And then that's kind of when we started grassroots. I mean, we definitely started with throwing something out there and letting certain people start seeing what we're doing. I mean, we didn't start FMS to go around and teach seminars all over the world. I mean, we teach seminars all over the world. We started FMS by simply going to a local high school, saying, "Hey, can we have an impact?" And then we started seeing some positive outcomes. We then presented it to a couple of people, and then all of a sudden, almost 20 years later, we are where we are. So it can happen. It just doesn't happen overnight. That's the frustrating part.
Absolutely. I mean, you've become the resource for movement screening, which is pretty sweet. Coming from grassroots, now you're global.
Yeah,
worldwide.
It's pretty crazy.
So.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. And kind of moving back to or uniting, some of that civilian with athletics, right? So let's shine a little bit of light on the FCS. I feel like not a lot of people know necessarily what that is.
Yep. Yeah, we knew the movement screen is just that. It's a basic fundamental movement. Can you do the basics that you need to do, like squatting, like lunging? So if you've got the basics, the next natural step is to make sure, okay, how well can you handle stress? Can we stress those patterns? And that's where the FCS came out of, is let's look at these things that all of us should be able to do. We should be able to run. We should be able to jump. We should be able to carry. And we should be able to reproduce that some of that power or that explosiveness.
Mm-hmm.
So those are the kind of the 4 areas we look at. Your ability to carry heavy. Mm-hmm. We look at your ability to jump, which is power.
Yeah.
We look at your ability to recycle that power, which is like over time, which is running.
Yeah.
And we look at your basic ability to control your body in different movements, which is kind of like climbing and crawling.
Yeah.
So we look at those different areas and we stress you. And then the difference between the FCS and FMS, we're putting you in a category. Does it hurt? Can you do it?
Yeah.
Whereas the FCS, we're really trying to compare you to normative data.
Okay.
What should you be able to do compared to the norms? And what should you be able to do compared to your peers?
Yeah.
So that's the other big thing is we're looking at stress in the body, but we really want to determine how well you're comparing to other people.
Okay. So in a different sense, right, this kind of compares back to, say, that presidential fitness for kids, right?
Yep.
In a broader sense.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, very similar. And that's really where I think we're going to have an impact. I mean, we're working with some local school. We're working with some school systems.
Yeah.
And I think the FMS it has a play, but when you start talking about physical education, the FCS and your ability to jump, run, carry, climb, much better. Could be a better way to integrate it into that lower, into the physical education curriculum.
Okay, that's awesome. And so another thing that I found kind of interesting, right? So you have your CSCS and you have AT background, right? So how have you seen anecdotally those two populations work together, or maybe say bond or divide over the FMS?
Yeah, I mean that's one of the objectives when we started really coming out with the FMS was to see to really see the two different professions combine and communicate.
Yeah.
I think in some settings they do a great job of communicating and work well with each other. In some settings they don't talk. And the goal of the FMS was designed to utilize both and use both skill sets.
Yeah.
The FMS to us have always been that common language that's needed. Okay, you come in and you take somebody's blood pressure and the blood pressure's high, well then there's certain things I need to do for that person. You come and look at their movements and they've got pain, well then they need to be assessed. They come in, their movement's good, well then you need to get them over to the strength coach, and the strength coach just needs to push them. And I think that's where that movement, that idea of the movement screen should be that area that bridges that gap between the two.
Okay.
Because they got to utilize each other
Yeah.
in order for the entire organization to be successful.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, very interesting. And so one of the things you mentioned earlier in our talk, right, you kind of mentioned how football is a little bit tougher nut to crack, right? So how have you seen the FMS implemented more on Olympic sports, or the football strength coaches or AT's mindset toward it?
Yeah, I mean, and it just goes down to, I think, some organizations it's not an issue, and I think with football in particular, the FMS is looked at as just too simple. It's not, some traditional strength coaches just look at it and say, hey, why do I need to do that? We got to get stronger. We got to get stronger.
Yeah.
Which has nothing really to do with the FMS. The FMS is just simply, are you ready to put strength on this person? Do they have the ability to accept that? And if they don't, it's going to be a problem. So in some areas, football's definitely gravitated to it. I think it just comes down to, and I may have misspoke, it's not so much football, it just goes back to almost the mentality of some strength coaches that feel like the FMS is just too easy, or it's all about correctives. Just a misunderstanding of what the FMS is designed to do.
That makes sense. Okay. Isaac, do you have anything to add?
I was just going to say, like, rolling off of that, some of the, like, talking to the strength coaches that do or don't movement screen, I mean, just be ready to do it. I mean, when you do it, definitely use what the stuff that you get out of it, the data you get out of it. And if a coach says they don't want to do it because they don't want to do that, they don't want to coach. I mean, I feel like they just be prepared to coach. Like, your job is to coach and make it better. It doesn't matter if you're coaching a bodyweight squat or a 1,000-pound squatter. Like, you should enjoy doing that, and like the thrill of watching progress.
Yeah, the movement screen is designed to be a tool to help. I would argue almost every strength coach is doing some type of screening, whether they call it screening or not. You get in the squat rack, you're going to watch how somebody does it. You're going to improve their squat patterning and make sure they do it right if you're a good strength coach. If you're going to sit in your office and not watch somebody do it, then you're not a good strength coach. So the movement screen was designed just to simply give you another tool that may make it easier for you to do that.
Yeah, it allows you to regress or progress somebody where it's best, and I think just from there it's time to coach. If you need to do correctives, it's time to do correctives. Get ready to coach it up.
And I think another interesting thing, right? So you mentioned earlier, but I think a lot of people get confused here when they have lists of correctives and they're not sure necessarily how to apply them, or even in the FCS breathing part, they're not necessarily sure how to apply or progress or pick. So what would you suggest to them?
Yeah, I think it can definitely be overwhelming. I think what you got to do is, one, the biggest thing, if you're going to look at somebody's movement patterns, you're going to check their movements. You got to first and foremost remove something. Okay. So if they've got a major problem and say, let's just use the most obvious one, squatting, then the last thing you need to do is say, go in the weight room and squat with load. So that's the biggest thing, and a lot of times that will help. And then it's looking at the person's entire, for us it's the FMS, and then it's trying to say, okay, let's pinpoint one or two things, and not try to just look at everything. And then it's about using your own tools, your own skill sets to say whether you like the exercise I would prescribe. You may have something, whether it's DNS, PRI, again, anything you think can help. Hey, I like this lead for the leg raise, or hey, I think I found this works for the squat, then do that. Our only thing is, hey, do some type of movement-based screening so you can figure out what the person can't do and can do so you can progress them. What you choose to do to improve someone, that's really up to you.
Okay. And that's, just going back to what we're there for, right? We're there to coach, we're there to help improve, and so I really like that. One thing that kind of just popped into my mind is, do you guys have any connection to TPI, or do you guys work together at all, or what's that?
Yes, we actually, Greg Rose, who developed TPI probably back in the late 90s, we've actually known Greg Rose since probably mid to late 1990s.
Okay.
So we worked together. We've been part of their growth and go hand in hand really since then. Okay. Gray, my colleague, just spoke at their golf fitness, World Golf Fitness Summit. So and Greg Rose and I go way back.
Awesome. Okay, so transitioning a little bit from the professional side and in kind of your personal development, right? So what has had a big impact on you as far as like your development and how you got to where you are, whether it be a podcast, a book, a seminar, something like that?
Yeah, I mean, I was extremely fortunate to right out of school. Yeah. Because as an athletic trainer, you are taught to basically wait for somebody to get hurt. Yeah. I mean, that's really what your job is. You're going to wait on the sidelines. You're going to go when somebody gets hurt. You're going to train them up. And I think I was very fortunate that Gray Cook, I was able to align myself with him because he definitely had the mentality coming more from the, even as a physical therapist, he was more strength coaching world to be proactive and try to avoid. And I think that to me was early on in my career helped my mentality thinking a little bit different, that you got to be proactive if you're going to really have an impact. You just can't sit back and wait. So you got to go after it and be more proactive, and then aligning myself with people that are smarter than me.
It's always good.
Just being a sponge and just pulling as much information as I can at a lot of those guys that I was very like, Greg Rose being one, Dr. Kyle Kiesel being another, working with those guys so much, just pulling so much off of them. And I think, the whole thing that I'll recommend, reading books.
It's
or a lost art. Audio books. Whatever form of reading and just sort of taking that information in is one thing that early in my career I did not do. I did not do that until later. And I think now there's so much content that's out there. We're doing a podcast here right now, and there's so much content that's out there. It's take it in, but the problem having so much content out there, there's so much bad content out there. So being able, in this world, able to decipher, that's why I think going back to just books, because if it's in a book, and from your friends, your colleagues, just talking about that stuff, I think that's where you can separate out. So reading and trying to absorb that is always a good recommendation.
No, I love that, and it puts it in perspective to hear you say people that are smarter than you, right? And that's just really funny for a lot of us. It's like you're pretty up there, so no, that's really cool to hear. And then transitioning a little bit, right? So if you have any, what are some quotes or like mantras that you live by?
Oh man, that was a tough one. Now I'll tell your audience. You helped me cheat on this one, so you sent me. Good thing you sent me this one. I think the two things for me when I really started, thinking about it a little bit more, because you always have these quotes that get thrown out and you read and you're like, man, that's awesome, but you don't really think about it. I think as far as me professionally, I think the one thing looking back is success. It's not about success. It's about the journey, right?
Yeah,
so it's more about the journey than just what you're trying to achieve. And I think there's a quote. And again, I'm going to throw these out there. Not exactly, but it's not about the success. It's about the journey along the way. And I definitely would say that's true for where I am professionally. We've been successful. There's no question to a degree. We're not where we want to go, but that journey along the way has been unbelievable. And then I think the other thing, as an educator, and this is one that I picked up on when I was teaching, is that if I'm always getting the wrong answers, I'm not asking the right question. So if you're getting the wrong answers consistently, you got to look at yourself and say, you know what, I'm not doing the right thing. And I think in this world, both as an educator, but also strength coach, if your athlete's not giving you the right outcome, you got to look at yourself. Don't just look at your athlete. What are you doing that's not putting them in the right position?
No, I think that's really interesting too. I'm reading a book on sales, right, and it's ask the right questions to help someone else come to their own conclusion, right? And so that's really important. And I think a lot of people within this profession, they try to perpetuate their own agenda without asking the right questions, which will then lead them to what they want to get. So that's really cool. Do you have any other thoughts on that? Or
No. I think those are the two that really stick out to me. I think where I am in my career, those are the ones there's certainly ones that kind of I've always lived by. Work hard, play hard has been always one that I definitely and that was actually my grandfather taught me that early. Is hey, get your work done, then you can go play. And I think for this day on, I still do that.
Oh, I love that. So is there a thought or experience or a struggle that you've had to overcome that you've held on to and that's made a big difference in your present day life?
That you know what? There's a lot.
Okay.
There's been a lot of kind of things that have happened that you just, and that's just life. You got to plow through. I think the one thing that occurred to me early on that was a great learning experience because what I do, I public speak. Right now I'm teaching. I'm always out there 100%. On the road, getting in front of people and talking. And Gray basically threw me to the wolves early on, and we were at a conference at a seminar. Early in my career, and it was a regional conference, so I had a lot of my peers in the audience, and I was probably mid to late 20s, so I was still pretty young. And he said, "Okay, Lee, you're going to do this talk," and I went out there, and I knew the content. I totally bombed. I couldn't even get started, and I'm like, "Oh my God!" I said, "You know what? I can never let that happen again." So I think that I just took it upon myself after that experience that if this is the road I'm choosing, and it wasn't that I chose it. It was like. Gray basically threw me out because we had this information, and people wanted to hear us tell them the information because we were starting to get some positive results. And I just had to jump in the deep end of the pool. And I think that has definitely helped my craft of being able to speak in front of people. I've always tried to continue to improve that. So every time I try, even today, I got to make sure I'm prepared. And I've been seeing the same thing. I've been saying the same thing forever and ever now, it seems. But always prepared. I think that was one. And then going and get my PhD. I mean, I had a few people tell me it wasn't worth it. I didn't need to do it. Because we were now starting to do this thing with the FMS. But going back and doing that was definitely something that I did not take a lot of the advice I was given.
Fair enough. I think that's a really interesting point that you were talking about public speaking as well, right? Because public speaking and going back to what I said earlier, sales, right, which go kind of hand in hand, cut across like all disciplines, right?
Correct.
So you will always have to speak. You will always have to sell yourself whatever you want to get done. So I think that's really interesting to take into account as well. And then moving forward with this, what is the best advice you've ever been given?
Oh, jeez. Maybe I didn't read all those questions. Well, you know what? I'd say right now, the people that, early on, if you talk about life, talking about just life in general, my parents and my grandfather who, the work hard, just always work hard, and you work hard and do the right thing. Growing up in the family I grew up in, and still good work ethic. And also we grew up in a Christian environment. So I've always thought that, hey, if you work hard, you do the right thing by the right people, it'll work itself out. And then now that I've gotten into the business world, that's really the world I'm in right now, and have been in the last 6 or 7, almost 8 years, hiring people and doing this. I think trusting yourself and developing the relationships. That was some advice I was given by some higher up. Just, hey, trust what you think is right and build a relationship. and it'll work itself out. So it seems simple, but
Yeah.
those are things that actually have been
Yeah.
have done pretty well so far.
I like that. Okay, in contrast to that, what's the worst advice you've ever been given?
Now going back and telling somebody tell me not to worry about your PhD. No,
Okay.
don't worry about it. Just
Yeah.
don't do it. And I
Yeah.
think that was pretty bad. And along the way, you
Yeah.
know, people are always giving me now, because I'm not a business guy, business advice. And there's definitely been some bad business advice I've been given that I've
Yeah.
actually tried to do. So yeah, I mean, so you're always getting some poor advice.
Yeah.
I think what the difficult thing is disseminating between what advice
Yeah.
is good
That's
for
a good
you and what
point,
is
yeah.
not good.
Yeah.
And you don't know what's good and bad until you try it.
That's true.
That's the problem is,
Yeah.
is you're going to take it, then you can
Yeah.
look back. It's always,
Hindsight's 20/20.
yeah, you look back and say, man, that was terrible. I shouldn't have did that. But you try to figure out who can you trust and
Yeah.
who do you not trust.
Yeah, no, I like that. Would you have any advice for any practitioners that are thinking about either moving into the business side or trying to develop something or even getting their PhD?
Yeah, I think one, just specifically on the PhD thing,
Yeah.
I think you got to know why you're doing it. Why do
Okay.
you want to go back and take that on? Because
Yeah.
the PhD is a marathon.
Yeah.
It's not going at it a year, 2 years.
Yeah.
You're going to get it. It's a marathon, and it's self-discipline.
Yeah.
Because it's you're on your own
Yeah.
for a lot of it. So that's the PhD. Just know why you're going back and getting it. And Juan, what was the second part of that?
Would you have any advice for those that are trying to go into the business side?
Yeah, you know what? Find somebody that you know in the profession and be a sponge around them.
Yeah.
Take everything you can from them. To make sure you're making that decision. We all know you guys are starting out. So you guys are in this profession. It's not an easy profession.
Yeah.
You can't go in it thinking you're gonna make a lot of money.
Yeah.
You got to go into thinking you really want to help people, and again that's cliche.
Yeah.
But you know what? You got to figure that out.
Most definitely.
And go into this business knowing that's the main motivator.
Yeah.
And the money will come. The money
Yeah.
will work itself out. I think that, and again, I go back to reading. Reading.
Yeah.
And you mentioned sales. I think
Yeah.
that's the one thing that a lot of people in this profession read things outside of your profession.
Yeah.
You want to be a well-rounded professional. Like right now, on the way up this morning, I'm reading. Happiness equation. And not reading, I'm listening to it.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
anything that's going to give you make you more well-rounded. I mean, this profession is profession is about relationships.
Yeah.
You got to be able to develop a good relationship. So,
Yeah.
Obviously you got to be knowledgeable about doing what you're doing, but knowledge is going to take you so far to get you over the hump. You got to be well-rounded.
No, I love it. Isaac, did you have any closing thoughts?
Oh, no. I mean, it's been a great talk so
Yeah.
far. I learned a lot all in today.
Yeah. Yeah, awesome. Well, Lee, thank you so much for your time. Is there anything that you're currently working on, or is there any way that people kind of reach out to you, follow your journey?
Yeah, I mean, we're definitely coming up with new stuff all the time. And, with the FCS just came out, our breathing just came out. We're mining our data constantly. We got some cool stuff, I think, coming out in the next few months.
Yeah.
If you go to functionalmovement.com, Lee at Functional Movement, shoot me an email. Definitely keep up what we're doing. We have Facebook, Instagram. I think it's #Move Well, Move Often. So check us out, man.
Awesome.
Thanks a lot, Juan.
Yeah, well, thanks you for
Isaac.
your time.
Thank you, Lee.
Hopefully we can connect again soon in the future.
Hope so.
Thanks again for joining me. And if you enjoyed the podcast, please go ahead and head over to iTunes, give it a 5-star rating, and hit me with the review. Next week we'll have another exciting guest. So until then, this is the Gamut of Performance Podcast.